Welcome students. Today we will continue with our study of history of English literature, and obviously from the viewpoint of the syllabus of UPSC. But today's period, the period that we are going to cover today, is not exactly mentioned in the syllabus of UPSC. Still we are discussing it only for the sake of continuity, because we are supposed to have an outline of the entire history of English literature if you are a student of English literature. This is obvious. So today we will cover the period from 1660 to 1700. This is the period when the restoration of monarchy took place in England. So this year is known as the year of restoration. We have already discussed in our previous classes that King Charles was executed as a result of the civil war that broke out in England in 1642. Finally, in 1646, by the year 1646, King Charles I was defeated by the army under Cromwell, and finally he was executed in 1649 and gave way to the establishment of a republican government that ruled from 1649 to 1660. By this time, Cromwell was dead. People were also fed up with the Puritan rigors imposed by the Commonwealth government, Republican government. The son of Cromwell, Richard, was not of that caliber, so he was forced to abdicate, and Parliament was also in a mood to restore monarchy. The problem was that the restored king, means the son of King Charles I, who was the King Charles II, who was to be King Charles II, he may intend to take revenge on his previous enemies. So they sent a proposal, and the proposal was briefly that the king, after restoration, will have to grant a general amnesty to all his previous enemies, and he will have to work on line of a liberal, in line with a liberal attitude towards religion. Means he will have to adopt a liberal attitude towards his rivals or opponents, whatever. So this was a kind of arrangement, and since King Charles II was leading a life in exile at that time, and he was not as hard-headed as his father, so he readily consented to the proposal. So finally it was arranged, the restoration was arranged, but King Charles II was restored by Parliament. So obviously Parliament was now much more powerful than the monarch himself. And in terms of personality as well, King Charles II was not a man of caliber. So he just consented to the wishes of Parliament. Parliament was now divided into two parties, Whigs and Tories largely, and both these parties benefited from each other and encouraged the establishment of a peaceful and stable society. Overall, the rigors of Puritan era were now not there in the society. Still, on the whole, the religious ethos were based on Protestantism. Catholicism was still not in England. A kind, you can say, a kind of Anglicanism began to prevail, except for a brief period when King James II ruled from 1685 to 1688. And in this period, in this year, he was overthrown as well. But the people in general did not want anything to be repeated like the execution of King Charles I. So when the occasion came and James II was to be overthrown, the revolution was named Glorious Revolution or Bloodless Revolution. So they wanted a completely peaceful society that would encourage their profit making in their commercial activities, in their trade activities. So all these things are social and religious developments were of this kind up to 1700. Now let's come to the personality of King Charles II again. He was a man of hedonistic taste. We all know that he spent most of his time in France and he cultivated a different kind of French taste there. And he now, when he was restored, he was now a man of hedonistic taste. His courtiers also shared the same taste with him because they also had the opportunity to accompany him during his exile in France. So they readily provided him with that kind of material, literary materials. I am talking about his personal taste only because the taste of the ruler is still to a great extent contributed to the development of literature, because though there was an increase in the number of reading public, there was an increase in the number of reading public, you can say still the writers, the poets, the dramatists looked for royal patronages. And it was to be continued till 1700 or after the till the first decade of this century, you can say. So the main literature, the main literary genre, you can say, that dominated this period was catered to the taste of king himself and also to the taste of society, because by this time and with the closing of theater after 1642, the taste of the people in general had changed to a great extent. Now the drama of Shakespeare, the drama of Marlowe were not accepted, and the proof is that Nahum Tate wrote King Lear again, and he made some important changes. Most of the scenes that could create an emotion of pity and terror were done away with, and it was given a kind of reconciliation in the end, and that was light. So the taste of the people changed to a great extent during that period. Many of the dramas of Shakespeare was also rewritten. Even Dryden attempted to rewrite Antony and Cleopatra and named it at All for Love. So the psychological depth, the psychological exploration of Shakespeare was replaced with um, verbal inflation, only heavy dialogues and swift action, swiftly moving action. And these changes were made, and drama was accepted. It was an instant hit. So these changes were there in the taste as well, and the writers were to just cater to the taste of the people. So we can notice a different kind of drama dominating this period mainly, and that drama is called comedy of manners, or you can say restoration comedy. The main theme was sex, search for sex, conquest for sex, sex intrigues. This was the recurrent theme in Restoration drama. The pioneers were Etheridge Wycherley, and finally we see the height of Restoration comedy in the hands of William Congreve, and some good dramas were also written by Wanberg. But initially, these dramas were accepted readily and they became very popular, but gradually a reaction against this kind of writing began to surface. And finally, in 1698, one monk named Jeremy Collier opposed this kind of dramatic writing. And the government also responded. Actually, his pamphlet or letter or note, whatever, it targeted most of the Restoration comedies. He was particularly outraged by the drama of Wanberg, and he was the main target, you can say. So there was a response from the government, and some censorship were also imposed. Finally, in 1737, official censorship was imposed on drama, and that was one of the many reasons of the development of a new genre, novel, you can say. But now we will focus on this period 1660 and 70 to 1700. So here, apart from comedy of manners, there were some other writers, other dramatists who tried their hands in an altogether new genre, heroic tragedy. Dryden was the main proponent, but there were other dramatists as well, such as Otway and his some of the lesser known contemporaries. Since this period is not in our syllabus, I am only giving you an outline of this period. So we will have an idea, brief idea of the literary developments of that period. In poetry as well, Dryden was there, but at the same time, Dryden was trying to maintain the dignity of literature during this period, but his other contemporaries were just concentrating on catering to the taste of the ruling class and aristocracy. So we have Rochester as well, Earl of Rochester. His poems, his personality was of dubious and scandalous type, and his poems manifested his personal taste, you can say. There is a kind of gaiety, a kind of vulgarity, a kind of passion, all these things combined in the poems of this man. Since majority was writing on that line, so on the whole, there was an apparent decadence, real decadence in the literature of the period. Only a few writers, only a few poets like Dryden, who were trying to maintain the dignity of literature. They were trying to explore new things. They were trying to just take the literature to new heights, but they were also aware of the changing taste of the people. That is why Dryden rewrote Shakespeare's drama in his own way and presented it as in a much more melodramatic way, you can say. He was aware of the taste of the people of that period. One more development was there as well, that society was becoming much more liberal. So now during this period, women also began to play roles in drama. Mrs. Carroll was the first woman to do so in the drama of Sir William Davenant, Seas of Rhodes. This was the drama in which Mrs. Carroll first played a role in private performance. You must know, in a private performance, she played the role for the first time. Before that, during Elizabethan and Jacobean period, main actors were given costumes of women and they were bound to play that role. Women were not allowed on a stage. It was the period. Now, the writers, we so far discussed the writers who started their literary career during this period, mostly, but we have one writer as well who cannot be said to be exactly belonging to this period. He had seen a Renaissance, he cultivated Renaissance spirit. We know him for his reformatory zeal, and we see the glimpse of that in Lycidas and in Paradise Lost and many other poems of this writer. And since the work that is in our syllabus was completed after Restoration, and any text is interpreted by a generation according to the taste of that period. And since Paradise Lost was completed in this period, it was read at that time as a restoration, as a work of restoration period. So, if we analyze Paradise Lost, if we go through that text, we will find the reformatory zeal of Milton in that. We can find the Renaissance enthusiasm, the quest for something new, and all these things there. Still, during this period, we can say comfortably that Paradise Lost was just read as a justification of ways of God to man. That was the main way of interpreting that text. That text was given a stature of quasi religious text during that period. People were very much mesmerized by the religious theme, the theme of the fall of man, the creation of new kind of universe. So they interpreted it in that way, and that is why it is also imperative to mention Milton here. Though we will study Milton in the context of Paradise Lost separately because that text is also mentioned in our syllabus, but it becomes very necessary to know a little about him here. Another important writer, though prose is not mentioned directly in our syllabus, another important text of this period is John Bunyan, Pilgrim's Progress. Pilgrim's Progress. This text, along with Milton's Paradise Lost, was also given the stature of a quasi-religious text, and it was quite popular during that period. For almost 2 centuries, it remained very popular. And we also sometimes trace the origin of novel from here. Some of the literary critics also are of that opinion. There is one thing that you can also notice in the heroic tragedy and in the Milton's changing attitude according to the age. Because in Paradise Lost, we can see we see that Satan dominates the narrative, and he finally emerges successfully in tempting Eve to eat that forbidden fruit. But in Paradise Regained, we find the attitude towards God in a different way. Just we can notice the changing attitude of Milton. Here we can see Jesus Christ in his heroic incarnation. He can resist the temptation. In Paradise Lost, we can see the Eve, the daughter of the God, succumbing to the temptation of Satan. But here, Jesus can heroically resist the temptation of devil. So, this is the change of approach according to the change of period, change of age. So, Milton cannot be just limited in any one particular influence. He was known for his different attitude, his continuous development, his dedication for continuous development was there, and we can notice it all through the narrative of Paradise Lost itself. But I particularly mentioned here the change in attitude of Milton because I wanted to make you notice one thing, that during this period, everyone wanted to compensate for the loss of heroism in English society. And that is why the beginning of a new kind of genre, heroic tragedy, the change in attitude of Milton, the presentation of Jesus as a heroic personality. So all these things just was just an attempt to compensate for the loss of heroism during this period. So I hope this lecture must have uh, been convincing for you, and this will help you understand the next lecture, and we'll give a brief recap, and then we will continue with the neoclassical phase and the rise of novel. So enjoy studying.